Hello, I'm Steph from idriveaclassic, and today's video was actually meant to be an MGC repair video, but it looks like instead it's going to turn into a Proton repair video, which wasn't exactly what I expected. And I'm going to show you what's going on first of all, because this has been accumulating for a little while, and I've just been waiting for someone to break a Proton essentially so I can get some bits, but I didn't expect to come to a complete stop. So let's start by having a look at the problem together. Now, none of this is a complete surprise because this has been lurking in the background for a little while, and I mean, you could probably say to me it's all my own fault, probably is. However, we're going to try and get it sorted. Now, I haven't called Kev yet to tell him I can't set off, so that's a little surprise for him. I'm going to try and get the car to Kev. Whether I can get it sorted or not, who knows. However, I'm not going empty-handed, because if you are into your Protons and you know even vaguely a little bit about them, you'll know that there is a man on YouTube who makes endless Proton stuff and probably has more Protons than anyone else in the UK. And I actually found this Proton before he did, and I think it's probably the only Proton he didn't find first. And that is John Coupland. And I think his channel is called John Coupland Cars. Anyway, I told John all about this problem the other day, and he said, well, I'll tell you what, I'll strip all the bits off the car. And I said, okay, let me know what I owe you. And he said, yeah, send me your address. Next thing I know, everything's in the post, and he wouldn't take any money for it. And so, John, if you are watching this video, thank you so much, because just this little bit of kindness has actually made me feel a lot more positive about the situation. And I'm hoping that Kev can add a bit more positivity to it and get it running. But let's keep trying to crank it over and see what happens. We're either going to flatten the battery or we're going to get going. But either way, the car either moves or doesn't it? But I'm not going to do anything unless I start cranking it, because we haven't got a trailer. It's pouring down with rain outside. So we've got all the ingredients for a really nice, non-stressful day. Come on, let's see what we can get done. I don't have a mic attached, but if you're watching this, I genuinely want to scream so much. It's ridiculous. Just stop, please. Oh, and it's so embarrassing because all the neighbours are either looking out of the window with pity or amusement. And we've all been here, and this is, oh, just turn around and keep walking. Can you see her? Just over there. She's looked at me with absolute pity. Please don't pity me. This is all a situation of my entire own doing. I am the fool here.
I should be watching daytime TV. I think it's heartbeat, isn't it? Right, we're going to change the throttle body to start with. It's got a spark. I've checked that with a spark doings, and it has sort of fired up, but it's not running very smoothly, so we're just going to go and do that to start with. I've checked the spark with this device here, and all it is, it's like a little, you can see when it sparks inside. So that's so we know the thing's got a spark, which is good news, but I think it looks like it's fuel related by the looks of it. So I don't know if it's a fuel pressure sensor. I don't know. The first thing we're going to do is I'm going to change this fella and see if that does any good. So, but it could be numerous things. It could be fuel pump pressure, fuel pump. I changed the fuel filter, so I don't think it's the fuel. I don't think it's the fuel filter, but it just depends how much pressure it's got. Could be one of these throttle potentiometer thing. It could be all sorts of stuff. It's all witchcraft to me, I'm afraid. I'm a plugs and points man. I don't know. That's what's happening at the moment. There's a wire that looked a little bit like it wasn't quite on properly. That doesn't seem to have made any difference. So we're going to change this to start with, because there's something in there that controls the fuel. And that's been on since day one, so it doesn't seem to want to come off at the moment, so I'm going to have to knock it off, take the bolts off, and it's still, look, it's still attached. Oh dear. So I'm hoping that this is the component that's faulty, but who knows. Right, well, it's not the throttle body by the looks of it, so I think the next thing to do is we'll just have a look. It's got a spark, but I think it looks like it might be fuel pressure related, this thing, or it might be crank angle sensor. I've changed the what have I changed? The coolant temp sensor, which is the thing that puts the choke on, but I think it's looking like it might be the fuel pump. Right, so we changed the distributor because apparently that's where the crank angle sensor is there. So we just mark the position of where it's got to go. It looks like it's not on the crank by the looks of it, it's actually on the distributor itself. So do that and hopefully it might do something.
Now you might be wondering why the next bit of this video I'm not sitting in a Proton with my bottom firmly plonked in the driver's seat. Well, I'm going to tell you what happened next. So Kev and I spent 6 hours trying to fix the Proton. We were there. We were trying everything from changing distributors to pulling wires off. And by the end of it, we just felt exhausted. We had no idea what to do. We were fresh out of ideas. We contacted John Coupland and his dad, and they said, have you tried this? Have you tried this? And all of the tries this or tries this, we tried them all, which left us with no other solution. We had to go and find a specialist. And I thought, where do I start? Well, I went on Google and I Googled in 2024, Proton specialist, and a garage local to us came up at home. So I gave them a call and they had Proton on their dealership. They had it on their website. And when I rang up, they weren't very helpful. And in fact, they pretty much said to me, you might as well get rid of the car. There's no way we're going to be able to get parts. There's not really much we can do if you bring it in and there's something wrong. And do you know what I did? I had 2 options. I could have sat there and thought, I'm going to scrap the car, which crossed my mind for about a nanosecond, or I could go off and find a plan B. And I actually reverted to somebody that I know very well. And I called up Andy Sheraton, and he runs, I think it's APS Classics near Lincoln. And I trust Andy so much. He's the man that restored my Morris Minor, and he's done work on pretty much all my cars. I don't think he's worked on the Triumph, but he's worked on pretty much everything else, and I have never been disappointed with his work. Now I know that Andy is a whiz with 90s cars. So I rang Andy and said, what do you think? And he said, do you know what? Send it over, I'll have a look. And he's very modest, so he never says, oh, I can definitely sort it. But I could feel that confidence coming across, and I felt like he could probably sort it out better than I could just sitting staring blankly into the engine bay. So what I did was I had it towed over to Andy's near Lincoln, and the next thing I did was, well, I booked a train ticket because Andy has fixed the Proton. Now, I'm not going to give the game away because we are about to board train number 4. Yes, that's right. We had to get a train from home to Leeds, and then from Leeds through to Doncaster, Doncaster through to Newark Northgate. We then had to walk 20 minutes from Newark Northgate through to, I had to check the sign, Newark Castle. We're then going to get a train from Newark Castle through to Market Raisin. Now, I did think this was going to be quite expensive, but it actually worked out at £27, even though I'd booked it about an hour before we were due to travel. So it's all going really well. Now, Andy tells me that the car is fixed, so the next time you catch us, we are going to be with Andy, and he's going to tell us what he did, what he's diagnosed, and what he's done next. And I also asked him to do something else just as a bit of a safeguard, because look, I weighed up my options and I thought, I'm going to be blooming miserable without this Proton, and I could find a car that's probably just as good, but it's not my Proton, so I'm not going to enjoy it. Because I know a lot of people out there are going to say to me, Steph, why did you spend money on a Proton? That's not really worth anything. But here's the thing, a lot of things in my life are not based on money. They're based on how they make me feel and how much I enjoy them. Because I realised quite some time ago, around the time of COVID lockdowns, that actually life is so much more than what something is worth on paper. So the Proton could be worth 50p and I would still spend the money on it because I really enjoy it. Is it a cool car? Probably not. Do I love driving it? Begrudgingly, yes, even though it's not a very me car. Right, come on, off to Lincoln. Right, moment of truth. Okay, and the lights have just turned red, so I've timed that incredibly poorly. But it means I get to chat to you about what's going on with the car. It was all really confusing for me because, as I said earlier, I didn't really understand modern cars at all. It's not an A-series, it's not something I'm familiar with, and therefore there are some people out there that think that you should just plough away until you get it, and there's no glory in handing the keys over to somebody else and getting your car professionally sorted. But my goodness, there's some relief in getting it professionally sorted. And also, I don't know where this misconception of, oh, there's so much glory attached to sorting it all yourself comes from, because if your skill set does not take you to the point where you can sort something out and you have tried for hours and you end up just sitting there and feeling really despondent, there is no shame in going and asking a professional for help. And I'm really glad that I did go and ask Andy for help, because this car sounds better than it has ever sounded. It sounds better than the day I bought it, which is actually a really good time to tell you that the day I bought it and I took it for a little run to the MOT station, it actually had a horrendous misfire which cleared by the time I got there. But I imagined myself arriving with this misfire, and I just thought it is what it is at this stage. Anyway, going back to what Andy did on the car, my goodness, he worked some magic. His first thing that he did was he did a compression test, and this wasn't something that I'd thought about doing myself, actually. And in fact, it hadn't even crossed my mind, and I don't know why it hadn't. And I guess it's because I'm quite comfortable doing it on the Morris Minor, because I was thinking, oh, is it another burnt valve? Which at the moment it is, again, another burnt valve. And I just didn't think to do it on this, and I don't know why. And I think it was because we'd got so bogged down in this theory that it was a map sensor, it was this sensor, it was the distributor, it was the idle control valve, that we hadn't really gone and thought about the basics. But that's what Andy did. Andy said, well, I'm going to check the compression, and that's what he did. And anyway, it comes back as 0, and not just 0 on one, 0 on all of them, pretty much. And he said, oh, I think it might be the belt snapped. And I thought, oh God, because Ian, as in hub nut Ian, had kept saying to me, you need to change the belt. And I was like, yeah, I'll get it done. And look, I'll be really honest, I've been so busy driving this and relying on this that I hadn't actually really got around to it. And I think I might have actually fibbed to Ian and told him that I did. So Ian, if you're watching, I'm really sorry. Anyway, going back to the point in hand, I asked Andy what was going on. So he looked into the car and he checked the exhaust valve. So you've got, I think it's an alien language to me, but I think there's 12 valves. There's like some inlet valves and exhaust valves, and there's 4 exhaust valves, and the exhaust valves can become stretched over time through heat cycles, and there's a lot of technical jargon going on, but essentially I think they closed up and they were totally out of whack. And Andy adjusted it all up and it started up perfectly, and that was what the problem was. So all that heartache, all that mucking around, I mean, I learned a lot about the Proton. It was not a wasted venture. I've learned so much in this expedition, but I didn't solve it, and I'm really pleased that I took it to someone who did solve it. And then Andy said, well, because you guys have been trying your best to sort it out, various things were out of line as well. So there's lots of other bits and pieces that are going on, timing, ignition, blah, 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 all sorts of different things that I really, really don't fully understand, but that we mucked about with anyway, vaguely looking at the Haynes manual as we went along. Andy put it all back into line, it's all sorted, and doesn't she just sound wonderful? It's so quiet, it's so calm, it's not bunny hopping along a road, and it's brilliant. And this is the best use of money I think I've made in quite some time. It is marvellous. And Andy, I cannot thank you enough for doing this, because I'm just so happy. I was really worried that it was curtains for this car, and I really don't know how to end this video because I'm sleep deprived. I've been at work all day, I've been on 4 trains, and I'm just so happy to be back in my little car. And as I said to you earlier, it's not always about what something is worth, it's about what something is worth to you beyond the money. And we need to do all we can to save these 90s cars, because too many of them are getting scrapped. And you see this all the time. People will say, oh, you know, it's going to take 100, 200 quid to get it through the MOT, so I'm just going to scrap it. Right, you scrap it, you've got a limited budget, you buy someone else's problems, and you just end up in that cycle again. Realistically, we should be trying to do what we can to keep as many of these cars on the road, because if it's not an MOT that's wiping it out, it's one of these ULEZ zones or clean air zones, which is why 90s and some 80s cars, are the 80s cars still at risk? Yeah, because it's 40 years, not 30 years. So you've got these 80s cars, 90s cars, these cool early 2000s cars, there's not many left, all being wiped out, and we should be doing what we can to keep them going. And that's where we end today's video. I'm chuffed a bit, I'm back in my Proton, and now I'm going to drive. Well, Fred said he'll do the driving, so I'm knackered, so thanks Fred. We're going to drive all the way back to Yorkshire with the lovely Proton, and we will have her at the Festival of the Unexceptional this weekend. And I'm not sure when I'm going to release this video, whether I'm going to do it Friday night as a bit of a teaser that we bring her, or Saturday. But if you're watching this, I'm probably at Photo having the time of my life with one of the best cars I have ever owned. And never judge a book by its cover, because whilst to some people this may look very boring, it's one of the cars that I've had the most fun with. So that's it from me today. It might be just a Proton to you, but it's so much more to me, and I'm so pleased it's back. So until next time, when we're looking at yet another car that's probably an awful lot older than this, take care and drive safely.